Chapter 47. The royal palace occupied what would have been the state capitol building in the human world. The outside was white and surrounded by pillars. The inside was full of vaulted ceilings with elaborate paintings. Alicia had made her way to her new living quarters to get dressed in the suit that Jadens had provided. Outside her window, she saw a yard full of elves assembling, despite the short notice. So many of them seemed dirty-faced and covered in rags, but there was a sense of excitement that rang through the crowd. Alicia moved from the windows and let her new team of elves style her hair, while they made disapproving looks at her outfit. They spoke only Elven, so Alicia let them carry on, ignoring their more grand gestures of holding up elaborate dresses for her inspection. However, she had timed her return well, and it wasn't long before someone else had come to escort her to her son. Kenny was adorned in a suit made out of a red cloth that looked like silk. It was split at the sides and tied all the way up with elaborate white knots with tassels hanging off them. The shirt was patterned with white embroidered starbursts. Alicia couldn't help the smile that spread to her lips. "You look very dashing," she told her son with a chuckle. He smiled at her and started giggling. "It's a funny shirt, isn't it?" "I like it. I really do." She went to tassel his hair, but thought better of it. Instead, she crouched down and gave him a hug. "You're going to do great." "I haven't finished memorizing this yet. Sadar says it's important I say it right." He held up a piece of paper written in Elven. "Keep practicing. I know you can do it." As they started to walk, Alicia reached down to take her son's hand, but at the glare from Sadar she stopped. It probably wouldn't do to have the king seen holding his mother's hand. Sadar had cleaned up nicely as well. He was dressed in a uniform similar to the one worn by the guards that were escorting them through the palace. They were a traditional elven cut with tan coloring. There were embroidered elven words running down their sleeves and a gold starburst symbol above their heart. Sadar's uniform included a few extra embellishments and was a darker brown color. It set him apart while still connecting him to a whole. Escorting her and her son, he looked to be at peace for the first time since she had met him. The group walked through the center of the royal palace along a walkway that had been sectioned off by rows of guards. Behind the guards were a mass of elves. These elves were not as disheveled as the mass outside the building. Their clothes were less worn, and they looked a little better fed. As the party passed, they tried to look over the guards to get a glimpse of their new king. There were shouts throughout the crowd, all of them in Elven. The rest of the party did not seem disturbed by them, so Alicia continued walking forward. They were escorted to a hallway off the throne room. As the doors closed, cutting off the crowd, Alicia welcomed the silence. Her son slumped down against the wall and started working on memorizing his lines. Retta appeared from a room off the hallway. He went to Sadar and started fixing his uniform, and then headed to Alicia to do the same to her outfit. "Why are all the people here?" Alicia asked. "They won't be able to hear what is said." "The world is changing," Retta said. "Wouldn't you want to be a part of that any way that you could?" "I could let them see it." Kenny looked up from his paper. "What do you mean?" Retta asked. "We could show them, like if they were watching it on TV. A small screen appeared in the hallway. The screen was a reflection of themselves. As Alicia moved, so did her counterpart on the screen. "That's remarkable," Alicia said. "I know that you said that I couldn't watch TV if we stayed, but I wanted to watch some, so I've been trying to make my own. I can only put stuff on the screens that is happening here, at least right now." Kenny looked up sheepishly at his mom. "How many can you make? How far away can they be?" Retta asked. Kenny shrugged. "I just need to know where to put them." "You!" Retta snapped at one of the guards. "Go find me a map." The guard turned to look at Sadar, who gave a brief nod before the guard took off. It wasn't long before he came back with a map. Retta started making marks on the map, while Kenny kept nodding at what Retta was saying. "There. They should all be ready." Retta stood until he framed himself in the window and started speaking in Elven. Then the screens flicked off. "First thing tomorrow, I'm going to need a tutor. I've got to learn how to speak Elven," Alicia said. "He told them that I could use illusion magic in the in-between so that everyone can watch the broadcast. He told everyone who saw it to tell their neighbors and come back in 5 minutes to watch." Kenny translated. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he looked down at the paper in his hands. I only have 5 minutes. He went back to working on memorizing the lines on the page. How will they understand me if I don't speak Elven? How will I understand them? Alicia felt her anxiety spiking again. The reality of what she was about to do finally hitting home. She had been so focused on getting to this point that she hadn't thought about what it meant to actually take on the responsibility of ruling a kingdom. Don't worry, I will translate for you. The Count had slipped through the doors and joined them. The screens were amazing. I think you may have scared everyone in the entire kingdom. Kenny's face lit up at the compliment. That reminds me. Retta, I was hoping that you could handle something for me, Alicia said. In the crowd I saw some familiar faces. I was hoping that you could escort them to better seats. Retta gave her a nod and then slipped out of the hallway. All right, we probably should not keep them waiting any longer, Alicia said. She nodded to 2 guards who opened the door connected to the throne room. Alicia took a deep breath and then gave a measuring nod to her son. Together, they stepped out. The room was large and could easily hold a couple hundred people. It had been arranged with wooden benches that were now full of the elitist elves. They were all dressed in outfits not dissimilar to hers and her son's. They were outfitted in jewels and elaborate hairdos, and not one person looked like they had missed a meal in the last year. In the back, Retta was making room for new additions. There was the young elf who ran the orphanage, as well as a few of the older youths. She also recognized the miners. There were a few other people that Retta brought in that Alicia had not met, who were probably people that he had been smuggling food to. Some of the nobility started mumbling at the newcomers, but Alicia turned away. In the front of the room there was a raised platform. The steps were made out of a type of stone and looked like they were a part of the building that transferred over from the human world. On the platform there was an elaborate wooden throne. The deep red wood twisted and wrapped around itself, creating a braiding pattern on the legs, arms, and sides. The back was a solid wooden piece that was carved with figures Alicia could not make out. On the seat there was a simple cushion. It looked like the most uncomfortable chair ever made. Alicia gave a nod to Kenny, and a screen appeared above the throne. Elven people, the voice came from an older elf standing to the side of the stage. I present you the heir apparent, King Kenny the First, and his regent and mother, Alicia. Alicia walked up to the stage with Kenny at her side. Behind them, Jadens and Sadar followed. Jadens positioned himself at Alicia's side, and Sadar stood beside Kenny. They all stood together in front of the throne, a seat that Kenny could not use until his official coronation. That could not happen until after her wedding, which could not happen until after she announced her future husband. There was so much to do, but standing on the stage, she let it all go. She needed to be present in this moment. The audience had stood up, and the room was full of polite clapping and more exuberant cheering. Alicia looked at the nobility in the front rows, acknowledging them briefly. Then she turned her attention to those in the back, people she actually knew. She tried to meet their gaze before turning her gaze until it appeared that she was looking directly at the screen, acknowledging the crowds that were filling the streets. Most had probably never seen the throne room, let alone been allowed to witness important events such as this. It was something she hoped to rectify. The people needed to be given a voice. When the cheering had started to lull, Alicia spoke. Citizens of the In-Between, I present to you your future king, King Kenny the First. The Count translated her words out to the people. The cheering started up again as Kenny stepped forward. He took a deep breath and started speaking in Elven, Jadens translating at Alicia's side. I am King Kenny, son of Alicia and King Taro II, and the rightful heir to the throne. I will use my magic to protect and defend the Elven people, my people. I hereby declare my regent to be my mother, Alicia Henry. Kenny stepped back and took deep breaths. Alicia wondered if he breathed during any part of his speech. The words were spoken in a rush, but just slow enough to be made out. Yet the people seemed to be happy with his presentation. They cheered and kept cheering, even when Alicia stepped up to the front of the stage. She spoke in English, pausing long enough for the Count to translate her words. Elven people, earlier today an attack was made on King Kenny's life. He was recognized as heir to the throne and then attacked. Sadar, blood sworn to the throne, had to decide to allow him to be killed or to take the life of his attacker. The attacker was King Taro. He attempted to take your heir's life without trial or judgment, leaving the in-between with no possibility of a successor. I understand that some of you may be concerned. Your new king is half human and half elf, the first known halfling in all of elven history. Let me assure you that his magic is strong enough to keep the in-between safe. The screens you see before you, made with illusionary magic, are just one example of your king's skill. There were gasps of astonishment in the crowds, as if they did not believe what they had heard when Retta first made the announcement. Alicia waited for the room to calm before continuing. I assure you that the king will use his magic to defend the people, and not to hurt them. There will be a new reign in the in-between. It will be one of fairness. All people who have been imprisoned will be given new trials with proper representation. The innocent will go free, and the guilty will be punished according to their crimes. Unless they have taken a life, their life will not be taken, as is the law that has been part of the in-between since its creation. Alicia tried understanding the crowd's reaction, but there were too many people to try to analyze all at one time. For a brief second, she envied those who could feel the energy of the crowd. Then she let the envy go. Even when there were difficulties, she wouldn't trade being autistic, so she turned slightly, just enough to see Sadar's face. He gave her a slight nod, and it was enough to let her know that things were going okay. I want to assure the elven people that I will not be regent alone. Therefore, today I will announce my engagement. The cheering grew louder with those words. Even the nobility seemed to scowl less. I will marry and will be regent with an elf at my side. However, this elf must have magic strong enough to defend the kingdom until my son comes of age. It is someone who can aid and guide your future king, and someone who has proven that he will serve the throne above all else. Alicia watched Retta during her speech and saw the exact moment that he understood. His face moved from confusion to fury. Alicia hoped that he understood that she did not plan on taking anything away from him. She did not need a husband. She needed someone to keep her son safe. In 3 days, I will marry Sadar, blood sworn of the throne. He will serve as regent at my side, and together we will protect the throne until my son comes of age and can rule on his own. I swear on my honor that we will abdicate regency upon his name day. We will serve as nothing but advisors after that day. After the marriage, King Kenny will be sworn in as king of the in-between. The crowd in the throne room cheered. Alicia wanted to be happy that they had done it. They had completed everything, except she wondered if Retta would ever forgive her for marrying his love.